Chapter 9, Teaching, Courtship, and Marriage. In December of 1882, Roy Ingalls recited the story of American history at school examination in the Smith. Ida Brown recited the other half, since Roy and Ida were among the oldest and the best students. They had been assigned the role in the evening and performance and resurrection of readings and the motions of learning. Laura was nervous and always a trifle bashful in crowds, but the applause was thunderous when she finished her part of the program. Many people were impressed by Laura's performance in the school examination, including the Ingalls. Good friends from the Silver Lake, Robert and Elliot Booth. One day, just before Christmas, Mr. Booth and his cousin, Mr. Bushy, at the Ingalls' home, told Laura surprised they had to stop to see not Pa, but her. Laura was even more amazed to learn that Mr. Bushy was a school board member from a little settlement 12 miles south of Daysmith in his school district, wanted Laura to teach a 2-month winter for them. Laura's 16th birthday was not until February, and she knew that 16 was the legal age for a beginning teacher. Mr. Bushy simply told Laura not to mention that the fact that she would agree to teach at the Bushy School. He would arrange with the county supervisor to scan her humility teaching, where hard to find and Mr. Bushy wanted Laura for school by the end of the day. Laura held in her handbook a teaching certificate and a contract to teach the Bushy School at $20 a month. During January and February, about twice as much as her mother had earned 26 years earlier. Laura had to live with Mr. and Mrs. Bushy. If I'm saying their name right, but and her young son, while they thought Mrs. Bushy was unfriendly to Laura, and like some prairie woman depressed by the losing and ceaseless winds blowing over the empty land, Laura was anxious to leave their claim, but Shanley each morning to report to the schoolhouse, which was abandoned homesteader Shaddy a half-mile away. Her students numbered only 5, Laura sometimes felt as she was failing in her work of teaching her first school, but she plodded through the days and paid her partner school days at her classes, and they spent to study her own lessons while her pupils learned theirs. Laura felt so unwelcome at the Bushy house that she's spending a weekend with her miserable host. Sickly, she hoped Pa would come out to take her home, but 12 miles away it was a long journey in the winter. As her first week of teaching ended, Laura was established to the sleigh bells ringing outside the schoolhouse. She was even more amazed to see how that behind a team of brown Morgan horses rather than a buffalo skin coat was Alonzo Wilder. Laura was confused and Alonzo offered to take her home and return to the Bushy's household. On Sunday, it was almost too cold to speak. On the ride home, and Laura's tongue-tied and bashful, as considered herself poor company all through 8 weeks at Bushy School, Alonzo took Laura back and forth on the weekends, patiently and silently braving temperatures of 10 below zero, much as I wanted to go home for those 2 days. I did not want to be unfair or disciple. For recall, once she told Alonzo plenty that when school was out, she would no longer ride with him. But he continued to fetch her on Fridays after the homesick weeks. of teaching finished, Wora was proud to receive her pay, which she gave to Pa. She had done a fine job at the Brochi school. Her students had learned from her and respected her. Wora knew that she could find another teaching job easily, but she would not go far in the winter again. Back in the day Smith Wora returned to school. Her teacher, Professor Ben Owen, also demanded the best in his students could produce. He was convinced that Wora Ingalls was his most promising student and told Pa that she had a wonderful mind and she'd be given very opportunity for an education. Professor Owen especially stressed writing skills with his classmates, requiring them to compose essays about what they taught and read. Wora's computations were always exceptional, so well done that Professor Owen used her work as an example to show the whole school. He was very proud of her, for though she had taught Wora was still a schoolgirl and liked the same fun and pastimes that her friends Minnie and Mary and Ida did. When a skating rink opened in Day Smith, Wora could not resist skipping school to spend an afternoon there. She was surprised to see that many of her classmates had the same idea. The next day, Professor Owen somewhat questioned his students about their whereabouts, and all had the answer that had been at the rink. Professor Owen told Wora he had set her to be a good example to her class, and spoke sincerely that she decided to never miss school again if she could avoid it. Day Smith had grown quickly since 1880, and there was many activities during the winters. When the Ingalls family lived in town, they were involved in country church and Sunday school. There was a church, suppers, and socials, and Christmas tree celebrations to attend a Liberties Oceanside. When it was started, and almost everyone in town went there to the Friday night meetings, where it was asked to the parties by Ernie, Perry, and Lawyer Thomas, but admitted much later that she was secretly admired Cap Garland and Fred Gilbert, who were already courting her girlfriends. Wora and her friends fought a young Swedish boy named Oscar, where it was a romantic figure. He worked as a hired man for the Wild Brothers, Royal and Amanzo. Amanzo seemed to have forgotten Wora's telling him she could not ride with him. After she finished the Brochi school, he continued to appear at Pa's door with his fine Morgan horse, asking Wora for a sleigh ride in the spring when the Ingalls family moved back to the homestead. Amanzo rides her with a shiny black body on their rides over the prairie. Wora learned about Amanzo. He was 10 years older than she was, and was a homesteader with 320 acres of land. His family lived in Spring Valley, Minnesota, but before the Wilders had farm in Malone, New York, there Amanzo had developed his love for the Morgan horses, which Wora shared. He had worked hard for the Morgan team, and then he had saved for a driving buggy. One of their drives together, Wora and Amanzo discussed their names. Amanzo's parents called him Manzo, and his brother Wora called him Manny. Wora said she had both nicknames were ugly and silly. She told Amanzo that she will call him Manly. Manly said his oldest sister was named Wora. Millie said that his older sister was named Laura, and he had never liked the name, so he wanted a nickname for her too. When Laura that her middle name was Elizabeth, Millie decided to call her Bessie. During the spring of 1884, Laura taught her second school. It was called the Prairie School. It was just a short walk of south of Pa's homestead land. Laura pay was $25 a month for April, May, and June, and she taught only 3 students. Laura said that helping them with their lessons was a pleasure. While the children studied, Laura worked on her old school books. At the end of the day, she walked across the green springtime prairie to Pa's house on the claim. Laura was admonished that she often worked on Saturdays for the dressmakers in Daysmith. She sewed well and worked quickly and was much demanded to help fill orders for new clothes. The townspeople needed Laura earn clothes for herself in this way, using her wages to buy materials and patterns and hats to wear to church. And when Nellie came courting, Pa had bought Ma a new sewing machine, and Ma marveled as its speed years. She had switched clothing for Pa herself for 4 girls by hand, and now she's welcome to the convenience of using the new machine. The whir of the sewing machine filled the house of the homestead while Ma worked. Another sound filled the house too, which was slavery, the Prairie School, and some money that Pa added a pump organ was purchased for Mary. The family knew that Mary was skilled in music lessons at college. For the blind, wanted her continued practicing at home. On her summer vacations, Pa added a sitting room to the Queen shanty to make room for the organ, and then the shanty could be rightfully be called a house. The farm was Presley, and though Pa sometimes vanished, they could move west again. He realized that he and Ma were settled permanently in Dakota Territory. Mary's summer vacations were exciting times for the Ingalls family. School trained her to function. Independently in the world, so Mary made the long railroad journeys for the Vinton Daysmith alone. She talked happily of her friends at school, her studies, the Literacy Society she belonged to, and many crafts she mastered. Her careful beadwork pieces they bead starting on the fine. When I marveled to Mary's family and friends, she brought home presents for everyone. Watch cases, jewelry, bookmarks, vases, and baskets, all created with skill of her sensitive fingers. Monza Wilder continued to come to Pa's house to visit Laura during the week. Almanzo was busy working on his farm north of Daysmith, but on Sundays he appeared with his horses and buggy and asking Laura to go riding. Sometimes Pa and Ma disapproved of his horses. Almanzo once bought a frisky, untamed team named Skip and Barrel, and he told Laura it was named for PT. Barham, that the famous circus showman. Laura had to dash to jump into the buggy because the team could not stop for long. But she loved the fast horses that led her and Manly over the prairie. Laura and Manly drove to the Twin Lakes. Henry and Thompson, and to Sprite Lake with his ancient Indian burial mounds. They raced through the Daysmith, and people started. They sometimes drove across the prairie, covering 65 miles in the afternoon. Millie told Laura that there was not another man in the town who would try to drive. Skip and Barrel. Laura remembered that Pa and Millie was trying to kill me. but it was most fun I ever had. I kept going with Manly, and people began to take it seriously. Where recalled, although Laura was independent, she now did nothing to discourage Manly from his intentions. They went in and Dave Smith's big 4th of July celebration in 1884 of the fireworks and races. They attended a singing school held at the Contrary Church and went and danced in the ice cream socials. One night, as Manly and Laura rode back to Pa's homestead, Manly asked Laura if she looked like an engagement ring. She was 17 and he was 27. They were old enough to marry and try homesteading on their own, whereas had the golden engagement ring from Manly, set with pearls and garnets. When she showed it to Ma, Ma said, "Pa, I haven't been blind. We're being inspected." Pa just smiled and he set the ring on Laura's finger. When school started in the fall of 1884, it was in a big new 2-story building. Dave Smith had already outgrown her for school. Laura and Carrie were both in high school room upstairs, while a 7-year-old Grace studied with her first 4 primary students. Pop decided to sell his store on the main street and so improved the house on the homestead, making it old enough to keep the family snug in the winter. They would live on the farm year round, and Pop promised to take the girls to school each day. He was often busy in the town anyway during comedy work of filling court cases. As his own job as justice of peace, he was also served as town judge, sheriff, street compensation, and the school board and church board member. Not long after Laura started her last year of school, Manly and Royal Wilder left on one trip. Royal had opened a variety store in the basement, and he outfitted a powder's wagon with goods to trade. The brothers planned to go to the big fair called the New Orleans Exposition in Louisiana, then travel north again to visit their parents in Spring Valley, Minnesota. Laura did not set to see Manly again until the springtime. It was perhaps during the weeks when Manly was away that Laura wrote a poetry again, the time expressing how she felt as her fiancé traveled so far from Dakota. Lonely, I'm so lonely, far from thee, days come and go, and we're all the same to me. For now, my beloved one, no more I see, no more I'll hear footsteps strong and free, no more meets there, neath the scarlet maple tree. Oh, my beloved one, wherever they may set, yes, may be wandering on the foreland shore or on the sea. Come, I recall thee home to me. Manly surprised all the Eagles family when he appeared at the door of the homestead house on Christmas Eve. He too was lonely for Laura and couldn't stay all winter, he explained. And then, as Laura said, he kissed him knee before all the folks. Laura wanted to teach school one more term to help Pa and Mom one last time before she married. One single woman could teach tech school. In the spring of 1885, she agreed to teach Wilkins School north of Dave Smith. This meant that once more Laura would needed to leave her own class before the term was over. Professor Owen was troubled when Laura told him of her plans. His eyes filled with tears. He begged Laura to complete the school year. He had wanted Laura's class to graduate together, but knew that she would pass the examination, so held the others back for another year. Professor Owen pleaded with Laura to give up teaching so that he could graduate her from high school by herself. Laura felt she must keep her promise to attack the weekend school. But as she admitted, this was a great unhappiness to me. I've always so longed for education and had hoped at least to graduate from high school. But teaching the Wilkins School was a pleasure. Her pay was $30 a month. For April, May, and June, she lived with Wilkins' family, who were cheerful and pleasant. Her pupils were quickly. And every Friday, Neely came riding over to Prairie to take her home for the weekend. He was busy improving his land and building a house when they marry. When Laura's duties in the Wilkins schools were over, there was a long summer days to spend with Mary, who was home from vacation again, watch over Pa's homestead land and experience the sunsets together. Laura told her sister that the next summer there will be 2 homes to visit. By then, Laura will be settled on Manly's farm. Laura and Manly had planned to be married when fall harvest work was done, but they heard the bossy Eliza J. Wilder wanted to plan a big wedding for them. Neither Laura nor Mary Manly wanted Eliza Jane's help, so they decided to marry sooner. Then they had it splendid too. Very quietly on the morning of August 25th, 1885, Laura and Amanza drove to the Reverend Brown's house and were married. Laura had asked for a change in wording of the wedding ceremony. She objected to the use of the word obey. Even if I tried, I do not think I could obey anyone against my better judgment, she explained. Both Reverend Brown and Manly agreed with her. After the wedding, Mr. and Mrs. Amanza Wilder drove back to Pa and Ma's for dinner. Manly and Laura said goodbye to Pa and Ma, Carrie and Grace. Mary had returned to school in Vinton, as they had so many times before. Laura and Manly rode across the prairie and through Day Smith 2 miles north. They came to the little house Manly had built for them. Laura Ingalls Wilder was no longer a pioneer girl. She was a homesteader wife. And she thought happily, I had a house and a home of my own. Okay.